Hello students, this is Professor Vivek Tiwari from Government E. Raghavendra Rao PG Science College, Bilaspur. I am going to start one new lecture series on database connectivity of Visual Basic. So this is my first lecture on this lecture series, and in this lecture we will understand about the fundamentals of data source communications. Basically, this topics includes in BCom third year computer application programming in Visual Basic subject, and this is unit 5. So in this lecture we are going to understand about the how to connect our Visual Basic program to our database. There are many more options available to connectivity. We will look out briefly about those options in this lecture. So let's start this lecture by defining the fundamental data source concept. So first thing we have to understand about this concept is that what is data source. Basically, a data source is a place where data and information can be stored, and this data source is also called a data store. Whatever data you have, whatever information you have, that must be stored somewhere in your memory, and that place where your data is stored is known as database or data source. It can be anything like file. You have stored your information inside the file, you have stored your information inside the database, and you have stored your data inside or information inside the server. Basically, in my upcoming classes I am going to connect a database with our Visual Basic program. So for the point of view of that concept, we have to understand about the database. So what is database? Database basically is a collection of interrelated data. Interrelated data means what? Let's suppose we have to create a database about students. So what are the related information with the students? Like student roll number, student name, student father name, student mother name, student address, the student mobile number, the class in which he is registered, he or she is registered, the subject that he or she is being studying. These all informations are related with students. So if we collect all this information, it becomes a database. Now our database is ready. It must be stored somewhere in any software, and that software which is used to store, manipulate and manage those data, those database is called DBMS software, that is called database management software. So there are many more database management software available, and the most easiest one is that Microsoft Access. So we will study it later on. So for the time being we have to study about the data source. So data source is a place where data and information can be stored. It can also be called as a data store, that we understand. If we have to communicate with our database, there is one problem with connectivity, that problem is that our programming language cannot directly communicate with our data source. Why? Because each and every data source, whatever you will see, that will use different protocol for your database communications. Since every data source uses different protocol, that programming language has to know about the each and every rules about data communication. So basically protocol is a rules to connect with your data source. So it is not possible for programming language to understand all those protocols, since database are regularly changing entity, that is there are lots of database available in the market, and if you have to connect with those database, you have to understand the protocol about each and every database. So we can say that programming language cannot directly communicate with data source. So we must need one interface or intermediary to connect with our data source. That intermediary is a driver and provider. For communication, Microsoft has provided a solution in the form of drivers and providers. So what is driver? Basically drivers are the software, we can say that a software set of code which is designed initially targeting database. Basically there are two different types of driver. The first is the Z driver, joint engine technology, and the second one is ODBC driver, open database connectivity. We are learning about the fundamentals of drivers. Basically, these drivers are designed initially targeting database. Now, what is Z driver? It is designed basically targeting local database. Basically, there are two different types of database. The first one is stored inside your machine only, that is called local database, and the second one is remote database, that is stored somewhere in your network but not in your local machine. So basically, Z driver is designed basically targeting the local database like FoxPro, Microsoft Access, DBase. All these are the example of the local database. So what actually happened? This is the memory of your computer system. Inside that memory there are applications. This application wants to connect with your local databases. They are not directly connect with their local database. They use jet drivers for connectivity, and this local database are residing inside your machine, and this jet driver will targeting basically the local database. If you want to connect with the remote database, this will not help you. So who can help us? The ODBC driver. These drivers are designed to targeting remote database. Since jet drivers are designed to target local database, there is one more category of driver, that is ODBC driver, which is designed targeting remote database. Remote database, many more remote database software are available like SQL Server, Oracle, and these all are remote database. So what would happen in this ODBC driver? If the application wants to communicate with your remote database, they have to use the ODBC driver. We will see it later on. We will connect our Visual Basic program with our database using Z drivers and ODBC driver. So ODBC drivers are designed targeting remote database. Basically, what are the drawbacks of driver? And the fundamental drawback of the driver is that it resides on our client machine. ये हमारे ही मशीन में stored होता है. For each machine, application driver and data source should be explicitly configured because it is dependent upon the machine. Since it is dependent upon the machine, for each machine, application driver and data source should be explicitly configured. That means आपने application बना दिया, package बना दिया और उसको किसी दूसरे system में जाकर run करेंगे तो as it is run नहीं करेगा. First you have to create a data source and the driver for that machine. You have to explicitly configure that configuration inside your machine to run your program. So that is the limitations with or drawbacks with driver. To overcome this driver, there is one new technology comes into existence, that is provider. The OLEDB provider, object linking and embedding database providers are designed targeting data source. But the fundamental difference between the provider and the driver is that they sit on the server system. So if you have to connect with your data source, you can use OLEDB provider, which is on server side. So the both drivers and the providers are designed using native code language, so they are dependent on the operating system. That is the limitations with our drivers and the providers. Since they are designed using native code language means that language that is dependent on your machine. So the code or the project that has been created by these drivers and the providers, they are totally dependent on your machine, that on an operating system. That means if you have designed one application and connect that application using database via drivers and the provider, if you have to use that application on another machine, you have to again configure the entire database configuration in that machine, since these native codes are dependent on the operating system. So these are the limitations with both drivers and the provider. Now let's take a brief look on how Visual Basic connects with your database. The traditional Visual Basic connects with the database using the three different approach. The first approach is DAO. That means data access object. The first is data access object, and this will use the JET driver to connect with our local database. The another is a RDO, that is remote database object. We will use ODBC driver to connect with our remote database. And the third one is a ADO, ActiveX data object. We will use providers to connect with our data sources, whether it's a local or remote. Both are included in this data source. So this is the fundamentals of the data connectivity of Visual Basic. So we will going to use these three options in our lecture series, that is DAO, data access object, this is RDO, remote data objects, and ActiveX data objects. So I hope you understand the fundamental concept of this database connectivity. If you have any query about this video lecture, then you can mail me your query. Thank you very much for watching.